Hello, how you doing? This is Scott Kidd, the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast. We speak a lot about multifamily real estate mindset and things of that nature. I have the privilege of interviewing Ify today. Very thankful to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. It's been a minute. I love calling you Scott, my sailor friend. How are you?
Very good. I'm always remember like it's been a while since we talked. But every time we talked, it was always a very happy conversation. So that's why I wanted to have you here, because I want you to share about what you're working on and all your great things and positive things that you're working on. For people that potentially don't know who you are, just give yourself a brief intro.
So my name is Ify. I immigrated from Nigeria about 2 decades ago to the US. I went to pharmacy school. I did post-grad training after that for 2 years. And I've since worked in an intensive care unit as a pharmacist. Wow. So I'm an ICU or critical care pharmacist, and I absolutely love it. I have great job satisfaction. And, your listeners are probably wondering, so what is she doing here? I have a young family, 3 children. We're up here in New England. I've been here since pharmacy school. I work here. A couple of years ago, I realized that job satisfaction and the ability to earn a decent income, put food on the table wasn't quite going to cut it. That led me down the investing path. I started doing the traditional things, raised to think it was just a 401k only. And so I opened a brokerage account and I started dabbling with that. And then, the stock market did what the stock market usually does. Yeah. I wanted something more stable, more steady. Real estate seemed to be the way to go. So first investment I made was in myself through education, because knowledge is a currency, right? So educated myself, relationships also in currency. And I joined a paid mentorship at that time, thinking that the only thing I could do was within the residential space. I just didn't know I could do something else. And so down that rabbit hole I went, scurried here and there, drank from the fire hose, chased a couple of shiny objects, like we all do as entrepreneurs, right? And then the realization of commercial real estate hit me through my learnings, and I quickly pivoted, learned how to focus, and fast forward about 2.5 years, and I closed on 3 assets, and I'm under contract on our 4th with a team. So my focus is commercial multifamily. I'm in the DFW markets primarily, also in Pennsylvania, and we target Class B, Class C type properties, 100 units and more.
Very nice. Some great markets, the DFW, Dallas. We're working on some development deals there.
Oh, nice. In that market?
Yes, in the south part of Dallas. It's multifamily, and we also have some medical offices, surgical centers that we're working on as well. And they're also in Kansas City. I love the Texas market. It's going to be great for the next couple of decades. For people that are just getting into it, how did you get started other than the education piece? Did you go to meetups, or did you go outreach?
Sure. As the president, I'm currently the president of the National Introverts Association. No, I'm just kidding. Most people will now not think I'm an introvert, but I am an introvert, right? Yeah. I am an introvert, and you have to think about the fact that I started this journey in 2022, so we were kind of in the thick of COVID, coming out of COVID, sort of.
It was a weird time.
It was a weird time where not a ton of gatherings, people were still wary about it, so I did thrive a lot on Zoom. I met a lot of lovely people. The person I partnered with on my 4th deal, I met through Zoom. So I would encourage anyone that's starting out. This is the way I explain it. Commercial multifamily, or just being an entrepreneur in general, if you don't have that background like I didn't, it's like speaking a completely different language.
Yes.
And how do people learn languages? Now, first of all, I only speak one language. I only speak English. So it's not like I'm an authority. My mom, as a French teacher, I have an idea of how these things work. You could learn a language by, let's say, Scott, you speak a different language. I could say, Scott, teach me how to say hello, hi, how are you? Teach me certain phrases. I could even immerse myself. That's why some people they travel abroad, and they try and immerse themselves in that culture. And the more they do that, or the more they watch television that has that separate language, they begin to organically, it seeps in like osmosis, and they also have to speak. That's what a meetup would do for you. That's what joining a community would do for you. You would all of a sudden be thrown into this world where you're hearing all this different lingo that you haven't heard. You can repeat it. You may not understand the fundamentals, the building block. You may not get that quite yet, but it's helpful to surround yourself with people who are successfully doing what you're aspiring to do. You can also learn a language by going to an educator, doing it in school, where they teach you the building blocks. An educator will start with the alphabet. Are both modalities of language learning wrong? No. Can you do both? Yes. And even in multifamily. So there's a bit of didactics that I think of fundamentals or foundation that people can learn. You can find all that information through your podcast. There's a lot of educational programs that are out there. You can learn it in a mentorship. They tend to take all this information and they compress it so that you don't have to. For those who are going into multifamily or going into real estate, or you're trying to learn how to run your own business for the first time, I would say do it all. Do online, do in person. If you feel you are at a point where you need even advanced learning, you can join a carefully selected mastermind.
Carefully selected, please.
Carefully selected.
There's a lot of them out there.
There are a lot of gurus out there. And yeah, that's what I did. And I think that did serve me well. Having accountability is another thing that's helpful. I'm very driven, but it was also helpful to have folks around me who were a couple of steps ahead of me that could turn around and say, you're going in the wrong direction, girl. Stay focused, do this and do that. I think I dove in head first. I didn't start off this journey in my 20s or 30s. I started off a little later. So, I feel the margin for error is I don't have that luxury to lose it all and start all over again. I could, I hope not to, but I was taking these very intentional steps in my journey.
I would say those steps of in-person meetups, going to conferences and just meeting people on LinkedIn. One thing that I know that worked for me during COVID is that the YouTube explosion, YouTube University, you can find any kind of business you want to start, any real estate or whatever you want. There's somebody that's done a video of it already. Just do a search and just find people that you align with. You'd be surprised if you reach out to these people on YouTube or what have you. You can connect with them.
That's true.
In person and get on a call with them. A lot of them will gladly do it. Just be careful who you connect with and be careful who you get a mastermind from. Surrounding yourself around these people, it'll accelerate. I know it's accelerated what I've been doing because I didn't know most of these things were possible, and I thought it was very overwhelming. And I know something new is always very overwhelming. And a friend of mine, Cornelius, I say this, I quote him every so often by saying, it's not hard, it's just new.
I like that.
He said he used to do the multifamily deal room.
I like that.
On Thursdays, and he's bringing that back. And I have to remind myself, because when you get overwhelmed and say, it's not hard, just new, got to do the steps, gotta keep doing them, and then, or if you get really stuck, like, who do I need? A big proponent of that, who, not how.
That's true.
Because there's the stages where we are in our lives and stuff with kids that are a little bit older, and, we don't have time to go and learn something that will probably take us a lot longer than finding that person.
That's true. And, that's part of why I like commercial multifamily, because I didn't have to do it all. It's a very, very team-based approach. And while it's important, it's pertinent, it's helpful to know what everyone is doing, you don't have to function in every single role, unlike one could in the residential space. So no, I agree with you. Having a team is super helpful. And you said it's not hard, it's new. And I'm just thinking that what appears to be hard for us is when we're encountering new things, right? It's probably our brain trying to grow and develop those new skills. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. And that's what makes it a challenge. So that's how I felt. So right now, one of the many hats I wear is raising capital, right? That is definitely not something any introvert ever said they wanted, they wanted to do.
I'm with you on the introvert as well. People say that I go and talk to anybody, but when I was a kid, it was that traditional, you only speak when spoken to. You go to somebody's house. If the adults are talking, if they ask you a question, you better have an answer right away. If not, you better be quiet. It took me a while to grow out of that. And I know I can relate to that because a good part of what I do is making those capital relationships, private equity, family offices, people, investors, retail investors. And it can be difficult sometimes making those calls, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And having those conversations, what I've learned more than anything with that, just speaking to people, all things are not for all people. So, you have to pick your, read the room. Because there's a lot of things that, when people might take things a little bit differently than other people, especially you have to mind what you're talking about. Everyone, what you think is a great deal may be terrible for somebody else and may be too risky, maybe, may not fit their lifestyle right then.
That's true. I mean, I've met investors who the syndication model simply does not appeal to their appetite at all. They're meant to do things that are, much large things, but with a smaller set of people.
Yeah.
Some just like the element of control. And I respect that. And I think that's why it's helpful as one is networking to network in an open-minded way. So if I meet people like that, what I'm offering may not be what you want or what you need, but hey, I got I know operators that are in this other space. I'm in multifamily. Maybe they prefer, the medical space, like you were referring to, or the development deals. So hey, that's not what I do. That's not my bread and butter, but I put someone that's operating in that space. And I think it's helpful when you're speaking with investors to qualify them and see if this is a good fit for the deal, for their portfolio, for their needs. I agree with you on that.
And even, what I've learned also is just it might not be right for them at this time. Correct. It might be better for them later on, or, they also, big part of his referrals. And if you have a good connection with that person, say, well, please share with your friends, or, let me know if you have other people that might want to learn about this. And I said, look, it doesn't matter whether you get involved with me or not. I just like you to know that these options are available, because I didn't know a lot of these options were available. And I worked for a large real estate guy, gave me my first captain's job. And I didn't, it was, 25 years ago. It was at that time where most of these commercial real estate deals were you had to be invited in. There was no soliciting. It's a very tight-knit circle. And even still, the very large, good deals, you still have to be invited in.
That's correct.
But that won't stop us from doing deals together or with the masses or other people that want to get involved. One of the main things that I am comfortable with is just letting people know that these options are available, and that people get very negative sometimes that things are going wrong or going bad. But this is just, real estate and commercial real estate is just another reminder that there are always options available.
There are. And another thing that I had, so with things going bad, whether things are going bad or things are going well, I think communicating and over communicating with your investors is super important. Communicating in between opportunities, super important. But for anyone who's starting off and you're thinking of stepping into the role or stepping into the space or wearing the hat of someone that also makes connections with other equity partners, you should be prepared for rejection. I should not take that personally.
No.
This is the typical introvert does. It's not personal. You're simply offering people an opportunity, and it's really up to them whether they want to, move forward with it. It may not be the right opportunity for them at that time, but that it's not going to be a good opportunity in the future. Yeah, rejection was handling.
It's still tough sometimes.
I had to learn that one.
Especially sometimes when you have a good rapport with the person, and then it's hard not to, but then you just realize, hey, this is not the right thing for them right now. So, hey, if what would be more your fit? Because like you were saying, a lot of times, like they might be into something like maybe oil and gas. Maybe they want to buy another business. Somebody was saying to me that, they had a business and they're like, well, that real estate, that sounds pretty risky to me. All that stuff is very complicated. And I said, yeah, but you have like a trucking business, and it has
its own risk.
We were in trucking and heavy equipment from when I was a kid in Jamaica and in Texas. For my parents, it was not very risky because my dad's been in that field for a long time. But, going to auctions and buying trucks and putting another one in the fleet and fixing the trucks and all these people problems and everything else, other people look from the outside and say, I'm not going to. That's very risky. That person was like, well, what you're doing is risky. I said, so it's all relative.
It is. And talking about risk, I think that the commercial space has the highest risk-adjusted return. So unlike, the fix and flip where it's high risk but high reward, our risk level is so much more lower. And I think that speaks to my investor avatar. And that's why I felt comfortable moving forward into this space. Some people may prefer the, get rich quick, high risk, and you realize,
there's no get rich quick.
There's no get rich quick.
It doesn't work like that. I have a couple of friends in the Dallas area, and they have over 200 single family homes, and they were talking to me about multifamily, and I said, well, it's hard for us to comprehend that. And I said, well, guys, you've done the hard part. Like, I look at that and I'm like, wow, that's impressive. Like,
Yeah.
I had like one or two, and I was like, this is kind of a nightmare to me. So it was relative, but they do very well at, they have their systems in place, and it really depends on your risk profile. Like what's risky to me might be not risky at all to someone else, especially if they've been doing it for 10 or 20 years.
Yeah. So they've scaled to about 200, and I guess that works for them, but I think that would be very off-putting for me. I skipped over residential entirely. I mean, I started off the residential space, but I went from 0 to boom, 243. Yeah, I don't regret that. And I think I did that because I got the confidence to do that, because I heard a lot of people who were in the commercial space who had been in the residential space talk about their regret of being in the residential space, saying if they knew now what they knew then, they would never have gone into residential. Again, residential is for certain types of investors. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I just think commercial is superior. But I skipped over the residential piece, so I'm not entirely.
I did it like you said, just because I thought I'd buy one house and buy another one, until I learned about the economies of scale, and then just like with the job that I have, like being away sometimes, it was at that point there wasn't really, there's not a lot you can really do. It's tougher to manage.
I was just about to ask, were you self-managing?
Yeah, well, I had a property manager. There was a real estate agent, but I didn't know anything about setting up the systems. I just said, well, hey, rent it out, and if there's a problem, call me.
Call me.
I had no idea, and we did that like the day before someone was moving in. The pipe busted, flooded the whole floor of the whole place.
Oh Lord, and, of course.
And then there, the people that came in, one of the plumbers came in. Well, you're going to have to get mold and this and that, and look, I work on a boat, so we went. Me and one other guy, we sucked out all the water. We had these big fans. We evacuate. We know how to deal with floods.
water damage.
Yeah, we had it done within 4 hours, and then we bleached everything out, cleaned everything, and it wasn't great, but it was it was like, I guess, paid for my education of what I don't want to do.
But do exactly. All that time.
If I had 200 of those, but they, like I said, they have a multitude of people and systems. It's the same thing that we apply to multifamily. We have professional people in those things, and that, I would say, that's one of the differences, is that in the commercial space, you're doing business to business kind of thing, where you're not dealing with the public as much.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, I would say that was one of the things that kind of would always put a knot in my, throat, stomach, chest, wherever the knots are supposed to be when you're nervous. But being a landlord, I didn't want to be a landlord. I really didn't want to be a landlord. So I love being an owner. See, I had all these visions of how I would be called in the middle of the night. And I was thinking about the fact that I had just gotten away from a phase where my kids were no longer waking up in the middle of the night.
Oh, wow.
I had gone through a residency program where we worked 80 hours. We're on call, 24 hours on call. So we got woken up in the middle of the night. When I got through that program, I started working as a pharmacist, I would mentor residents who were, going through their own 80-hour work weeks, and I could get woken up in the middle of the night if they had a question as well. So once that was done, the last thing I wanted to do was get woken up in the middle of the night. I'm like,
the toilet doesn't work.
I'm not doing this.
What are you doing using the shower at 4 in the morning? Yeah. But, the thing is, nowadays, that there are those other home warranties and apps and all these things that can help management, which I think in the last 5-10 years it has gotten a lot better. And that family I had was, it was over 10 years ago. So,
but then think of the fact that if you had, say you had a duplex, let me make it more. Say you had a quadplex. and two people moved out because
Yeah.
they now want to buy a house, which is a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So you're on the hook for either paying the
Yeah.
mortgage that month, or you have to, get your property manager or your
You
lease
have to turn
officer.
over. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be another, pain, depending on, the types of tenants you have or the
Yeah.
market you're in. I'm in a cold blue state, and I wasn't looking to do any of that renting here, because
Yeah.
again, hurts horror stories as well.
Yeah, especially if it takes you a long time to turn over and the people
Yeah.
in there not paying. There's a lot of
Hmm.
those bad stories happening. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate. I mean, I've grown to be probably the older I get. I'm not sympathetic to people as much, but I'm more empathetic. Like things
Hmm.
happen, some people have bad times and stuff, but it's the thing is if you sign the lease and you can't pay the rent, you can't really, you shouldn't really be there.
True.
I understand but if, just word to people that are residents of these apartments and stuff, if
Hmm.
you're having a tough time, go and speak to the manager and talk and say, hey,
Exactly.
do it ahead of time. Hey,
Exactly.
I just lost my job. Can we
Exactly.
work out some kind of payment plan?
Exactly.
And if they say
Exactly.
no or what have you, then you work something else out. But most of the time, if you go forward with that communication,
Hmm.
you usually puts you in a better light because you're
Yeah.
showing the intention to do the right thing. And I think
Correct.
goes back to your over communication
Hmm.
with the investors, with the residents, because if you don't have good resident relationships and um, a good resident experience,
Hmm.
then the property goes down, the rents
Yeah.
go down, the investors are upset. You can't have happy residents, you can't have unhappy residents and happy investors. It just doesn't. The two go together. And
That's true.
what is often forgotten, and I think has been forgotten sometimes, is that it's really all about the customer, which is the resident.
Hmm. Hmm.
They have to want to stay there and live there. Have it to be a good, safe place to live. One of the things that I've always said is like, well, can my wife go over there and pick up the rent? Which,
Mm.
you don't have to do that these days, but if I can
Correct.
say that, if she can drive there at any time and go and walk around there and it's safe for her, then it's probably a good place to live.
No, that's true. One of my favorite asset managers, Cindy Harding, she has a saying, and I can't remember exactly how she phrases it, but something along the lines of, "It's important to let people in." So looking at traffic, to your
Yeah,
property, very important, but it's also more important to also close the back door to make sure that the
yeah,
people that come in stay there. So resident satisfaction, resident retention, and any event or activity or changes you can, enact on the
yeah,
asset to make sure that residents, their quality of living is improved by way of amenities, or making sure
yeah,
that it could even be, the speed with which you respond to work orders.
yes,
Super helpful. That's
yeah,
because they're human beings too. So yeah, no, I
yeah,
completely agree with you. We do invest in states that have business-friendly regulations, but the intent is not to, just walk in and start evicting everyone that doesn't pay on
yeah,
day one. We try and work with people, and that's what you're saying is key. We try and work with people, but they don't want to work with us, and they just want to, just live and not pay
yeah.
rent. There's a process for
And
handling
also,
that.
if you work with that person,
Mhm.
and they're probably gonna be loyal and stay there a lot longer,
Yeah.
life happens. We've all been there where things go bad,
Yeah.
but the resident experience, you want to keep them there because turnover is our biggest expense on running these
Yes.
multifamily
Yes.
apartments and in any commercial real estate. When
Yeah.
the lease is up and say the long-term tenant moves out, you have to work to find somebody else. You have to redo the place.
Hmm.
The amount of time that it's empty is time you're not getting revenue. So it's more than 2, 3, 4 times that. It's not just what goes into it. That time goes exponential as it gets longer.
Yeah.
Because you're losing, much more factors of that. So
Hmm.
we have to just always keep that in mind and just realize if you keep their experience the best,
Yes.
you're going to have happy investors. You're going to have a happy property manager. You're going to have a happy, and property management is the key, really. That is
They
the
are
key.
key to a successful business plan. They are key to an amazing asset management series. That's what we teach. That's what we teach. So your property management, they're one of the key, very, very key and crucial partners that external partners beyond the GP team that will have the lenders, but the property management managers. We have been very fortunate on the assets that we have. One of the assets we had to fire a property.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I think there was conflict which we didn't know. I think they had. The prior owner had some ownership stake in the company, so we closed, and then all of a sudden they're no longer available to do weekly meetings. But we closed and we're not stable, and we need to do this. So
Yeah.
they're not available, or they can't come to the asset as much as they, all of a sudden they remember they're out of state, and so it wasn't.
They were boots on the ground. Now they don't live here anymore.
No, they can't be there as often as we would have liked. Okay, fine. So I guess we're not in alignment, so out you go. And we replaced them with an amazing company. The
Right.
irony in that particular asset is when the prior owner had it, so it was student housing, right? And when the prior owner had it, he injected, I think, about $1.5 million into it. He was renovating it. It was Class A, beautiful. But he failed to recognize that with student housing, it has this short window of time where you have to start leasing for the next school year.
Oh, yes.
So he was running out of time, and then realized it. So he got a second company just to help with leasing up. Great. We take over, and the business plan is essentially put heads in beds, right?
Yeah.
But then the property management company wasn't working out, and so we had to fire them. And guess when we did this? During that critical window.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
We had to. So
Yeah.
with the one we have now, we have gone through, sink or swim, ride or die.
Yeah.
With us through the highs and the lows, and they've been amazing.
Yeah, because I know they do in student housing, for those that don't know, they do it like August, September, sometime around there. That's the time, and it's annual leases. There's no,
It's
all the
annual
leases
leases.
start and finish at the same time.
Yep.
So, because it can get really complex, and now with having next year going to have two daughters in
Yes.
university, I understand why they do it that way, because where they go in Central Florida, it's 70,000 students. So
Yeah.
that's a city.
It is. And do the freshmen stay on campus over there?
It's not required because there's so many
Wow.
people there, and there's a shortage of housing. I don't know if there's enough housing, but it's highly recommended. And I would prefer they stay on campus at first. You're just to get to know the place, and like security is better. And since they're two girls, I always think about security and stuff like that because
of course,
because they need to be moving around where there's other people and things like that. And a lot of things go into the student housing that are very similar to multifamily, but that little gap of lease time is very important. Can be a great thing, but it can also, like you said, if you're at that time, that can be pretty tough.
It was tough, and that was my first deal. And yes.
always the first one's always the tough one.
The first one. Yeah, it was a lot of learning though, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Scott, when you were saying that, when I asked you if your daughters would stay on campus, and you said that there wasn't enough housing, I said, maybe.
I did see the wheels start working.
Development deal somewhere in Florida. Where did you say the address was?
Because we're actually looking like to get like a house or some kind of small apartment or something in the area so they can live in there, and then I want them to learn about doing that kind of property management and stuff, and learning the power of these kind of things, and because the thing with the student housing, they could, if it's like say a 4 or 6 apartments, they probably have 3 or 4 beds, in each one. So then they rent it by the bed.
Yes.
They have a room, and then they learn how to manage that. And I know one of the important things for you guys with the student housing is getting the parents to co-sign.
Yes. Getting well. We
Getting a cosign.
getting them to sign, getting them to co-sign, but getting them to speak to the parents first to start planning to actually lease for the next year. It's like,
yes,
tell your parents. You know, they go on holidays, they go on Thanksgiving break, come back. Ooh, they forgot Christmas. Ooh.
Yeah. The absent-minded teenager or the young person. I know we've all been there. Oh, wait, I gotta.
I gotta think about housing for next year. Yes, honey, you do.
You have to be very proactive, and teenagers in general are not.
Yes,
they're not there yet sometimes.
Yeah. They need a little help.
So sometimes we all do. But what they see as being, I guess, overbearing, I guess we see as helping.
Yes. You talked about, setting something up in place for your children. And I do want to touch on that.
Yes.
Because if you ask a lot, not everyone, but if you ask a lot of people who are in real estate, why are you doing this? What's your why? They tend to point towards their family. They use catchphrase generational wealth. But I like to see it as impact, right? Yes. We're dressing it up in the clothes called generational wealth, but I think it's more than just saying to your children, oh, look at all these buildings, they're now in your name, or look at all this money that's coming in, it's all in your name. It's not just teaching them about what we're doing, how we're doing it, but why we're doing it and why it's important for them to know. And I think one measure of success that we can hopefully be alive to use as a benchmark is if they are able to not only embody this, but teach their own children.
Yes.
So that's
very important.
Going from one generation to another. It's more than just here's some, this trust I've created for you, this bank account, this, passive source of, income. But why did I do this? How did I do this? And why do you need to know this? And how are you going to use this information to pass this on to your own children and set things up for them as well? I think that's crucial. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think it's when you think of it more, there's that saying, a hand up is better than a handout. Where you give them a hand up into exposing them to these things, and for me, I just want them to know that hey, their dad took a swing at it, went for it, and even if it doesn't get to whatever it's supposed to be, at least they'll see that, and then they'll go after whatever they want. And for me, it's about giving them the opportunity to have these assets and this financial freedom, so they can go and do things that they're passionate about and help other people. Because when you have that time freedom, you have much more opportunities where you can be that person that can maybe be the light for somebody else.
No, I agree. It's almost like a relay race where your leg, Scott, and my leg involved you being a sailor, I being a pharmacist, and we also became entrepreneurs. We also became business owners. We went into this. And our kids are waiting to run the next leg.
Yes.
At some point, they're watching us to see how we're running, how well we're running, how fast we're running. And when we pass it on to them, it's not so that they run it exactly as we did. You have to do multifamily. You have to be a business owner. But to your point, you can live life on your own terms. See how mom's doing it, see how dad's doing it. And here's the baton. It's now your turn. Tag your it. Go run your own race and hurry up because your kids are waiting for you or the next generation.
It's like you're saying, it's building that foundation that they can step into that where they can see. They'll be at a much higher place than we were at our ages, so they can see a lot more, and it provides a different purview to where they can see and do even more. And it's just an opportunity that you always want your kids to do much better than
Of
you have,
course.
and or at least have those opportunities that you didn't feel that you had, even though I think we probably had them all along. We just didn't know they were
We
there.
didn't know it. Yeah. So,
We were looking in the wrong places. Because I know for a long time, for probably 20 years, I focused on building my career, being
mm,
the best captain, and then found out about these other things. And it's like, I always looked for something where I could have some kind of fallback, because it's a very fickle business. It's very
mhm.
unstable,
Yeah.
and nowadays the job market can be very unstable anyway. So we need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet, and that's just building that to where we have that cushion and stuff like that. And and then eventually it builds into, well, gives me more options to where eventually, if I want to walk away from the boats, which I probably won't, I
Yeah.
don't think I
You're
ever will,
like,
because I still love doing it. I have that option. If I don't like it anymore, then I can just walk away and wash my hands of it. But
mhm.
that's not the case right now. But I'm sure it's the same with you, because you
Same
seem to
with
be very
me.
passionate about what you do and
Oh, it's so
helping people.
fulfilling. Yeah, yes, yes. I love being a pharmacist. Yeah, so same with me. Yeah,
Yeah.
but doing it on your own terms doesn't hurt.
Yes.
When you would like to, yes. Well, yeah, I love what I do.
Yeah, no, that's evident, because you're a very positive person, and
Oh,
I
thank
guess
you.
that's why we gravitated, and always have great conversations with you and everything, because we're very positive, and I think it builds. I think energy from people builds together. So a lot of times
Hmm.
there's reasons we can't explain why we come together sometimes.
True,
So,
true. Oh, this is
well, it's
awesome.
been an absolute pleasure.
Same here.
Always, always is, and I look forward to speaking more, and hopefully, we can do something together today,
I
make
would
make it
love
better for
that.
other people,
Yeah.
myself too. So, how if people wanted to get a hold of you, how would they reach you? What's the best way to get in contact with
Best way would be LinkedIn. I believe there's only one of me.
you? There is only one of you.
If yeah, so and I have with the farm D maybe right there beside my name. But yeah, LinkedIn. I can be reached by email as well. It's Ify at GoshenCapitalInvestments.com. But LinkedIn's your
Perfect.
best bet.
Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for
Of
coming
course.
and sharing your time with me.
My pleasure. I love being here. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. And this is the Yacht Captain Investor out. And just a reminder, your biggest investment is the one you make in yourself. Thank you.